Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. I'm intending to get back on top of things with this YouTube channel, so I may be doing a few more reviews and things as time goes on. I have been furiously gigging over the last couple of years, so forgive me for my lack of uploads. However, because of all that time spent playing all over the UK, I can give you my professional and experienced viewpoint on certain bits of gear that you may find interesting. The topic of today, obviously, is all about this: the Sire Larry Carlton L7. Now, these have been around for the last few years, in fact from 2020 I believe, but I picked my one up in late 2021 after getting a bit of an L-type guitar craving and sort of needing an instrument like that to do a lot of the rock-based sets that I was doing at the time, and still am, of course. And for this video, I figured that instead of gifting the internet another fresh out of the box unboxing video, I might take the approach of a more sort of rigorous road testing at the various gigs and events that I've played at for the last couple of years, so that I can give much more of a real-world working professional musician review, based on my experience. That is, of course, in no way suggesting that any of the other fab unboxing reviews or demos are somehow of lesser quality or inaccurate, far from it. But this is just my perspective as someone who is personally invested in the instrument and used it regularly alongside my other guitars. So, with all of that said, let's get to it, shall we? Kicking things off then with my first impressions. As this was delivered to me about 2 years ago, you'll have to forgive me because my memory is a little bit fuzzy on certain specifics of the guitar as it arrived. But what I do remember is that it was extremely well packaged once it arrived from Anderton's, as per usual. The setup was satisfactory, I'd call it, but overall looked like it was in great condition, as to be expected buying new. The flame maple veneer, I think you'll agree, looks gorgeous on this guitar, really is the business. Once I picked it up and started playing it though, one immediate issue presented itself. The B string snapped at the tuning post after my first big bend. Giving it the benefit of the doubt and knowing that I wanted to put on a full set of Elixir strings anyway, I decided at that point to put on a fresh set of 10s and see how I went from there. Bad news. The string snapped at the post again. This is where I'm going to have a little moan about locking tuners. You see, I absolutely understand the appeal of having a guitar fitted with these, having them installed on my number one Strat myself, and I've never had a regret doing that. They work very well. However, the only real benefit I've got from them is actually saving a small amount of time during restrings, given that you don't need to wind up the tuning peg as much. Other than that, I haven't noticed any other positive effects on my guitars that have these kind of tuners installed. In fact, my regular tuners seem to have no problem holding strings firmly in place around the post with no slippage, and any tuning issues that present themselves are really just caused by friction at other parts of the guitar. Cheaper unbranded locking tuners, like the ones I suspect were installed on this Sire from the factory, may have issues with things like burring on the string post where it sits, or a sharp clamp inside the locking mechanism, which will obviously both cause the string to snap when it comes under pressure. You can avoid encountering this yourself by just using any decent standard tuner. Often the ones installed on your average guitar in the first place are probably best. And just make sure you use proper string winding technique. Ask your guitar tech or repairer to advise, or even do it for you if you wish. It has been mentioned by a few other guitar channels before now, but the standard Kluson tuners that you'd get on a lot of vintage Fenders are actually really good. They just work tremendously well. Anyway, all of that said, I decided to fix the problem by installing some Goto 3x3 tuners that would fit the holes already drilled into the back of the headstock for the factory fitted tuners. As soon as they were on and all strung up, I have had zero string breakages there since. I guess if we're going to be moving further on down the anatomy of the guitar, I would just like to briefly mention the nut. While it was passably carved from the factory, it did need a little work in terms of adjusting the height of the slots. Thankfully, my brother is a luthier, and as I was near his workshop at the time, he was able to file the slots for me while working on another mod that I had installed by him. More on that later.
Yeah, what you typically see at the factory is that they are on the fraction side of high, and I've seen some which are massively high and some which are low as well. And that's talking on anything from, you know, Squires up to Gibsons. So
yeah,
it's not because you've got a cheap guitar or a bad guitar or even a really good guitar, it's just the way that they come out of the factory sometimes.
Yeah,
depends who set them up in the first place.
In terms of other issues relating to the nut, I was having a little bit of tuning trouble with the G and D strings. This is a very common problem for L-type guitars or any guitar that uses a 3x3 tuner setup, as the break angle of the G and D strings over the nut can cause a little bit too much friction and the strings can catch, obviously resulting in pulling the string out of tune. I personally managed to resolve this issue by taking those particular strings and winding them around the posts in reverse order. What I mean by that is taking it from bottom to top as opposed to top to bottom. That seemed to reduce the break angle over the nut and eliminated the tuning issues I was having with those particular strings, but I had to say, having those well-carved nut slots really helped. Now to talk about the neck and the frets. This is where this guitar really shines, and I think all the other reviews on it so far would probably agree with me. Sire have done a fantastic job of giving this guitar a very comfortable feel with modern convenience, but a vintage familiarity. And as cliche as that all sounds, it's true, to be honest. It seems as though that was their goal for the whole Larry Carlton range. What I'm talking about specifically here is the standard C-neck profile having a really lovely smooth matte finish, a beautifully carved neck joint, and the frets being rounded and brilliantly shaped, all resulting in a wonderfully comfortable playing experience in the sense that you're playing a very high quality instrument. I haven't even needed to have anything done to the frets in terms of leveling or anything like that for the setup, though I can't guarantee that's going to be everyone's experience. I may have been lucky. Moving on down the guitar, we come to the pickups. This is where, in hindsight, I'm really kicking myself for not recording more examples of these stock pickups before I swap them out for the Seymour Duncans I have in now. Just as a quick side note, if I haven't managed to find any decent recordings of those, I'd advise you find another demo of the stock guitar online and try to compare the demos with the tones you'll hear from my guitar in this video. What I can say though is that while the pickups from the factory were certainly usable, I found that the neck pickup in particular was a little too woolly for me, especially coming from a world where I'm used to the sort of Strat type single coil neck pickups that I so often use. I did miss having that bite and definition, but I knew I wanted some warmth and depth that would be commonly found in a really nice quality neck humbucker pickup. So I went for a Seymour Duncan Jazz, and according to the handy website description, that would give me the desired brightness and be versatile enough for a few musical applications, which is always greatly appreciated by me as a working musician navigating a number of guitar styles almost daily. The bridge pickup, now a Seymour Duncan 59, was only really changed to better match the neck pickup. Tonally, there wasn't much I disliked about the factory bridge pickup. From memory, it wasn't a million miles away tonally from the sound of the 59. I suppose there might be a little more punch and clarity, but that may have even been down to a slightly different pickup height at installation. Speaking of which, there was a little trouble installing the bridge pickup into the cavity that it was meant for. As I recall, the area for the ears or tabs of the pickup plate wasn't quite deep enough and it made screwing the pickup in place slightly difficult, but it did go in after a little bit of persuasion. I do sometimes find that the pickup has slipped down on one side occasionally. This is just due to one of the screws coming loose. So obviously that is resolved by just quickly screwing that back in. All good to go. It's no major issue, but it is something to be aware of if you're thinking of modding your guitar in the same way. Any small issues like that aside, I really do love the sound of this guitar now. It definitely ticks all the boxes I wanted ticked for an L-type guitar. Plenty of power, sustain, definition, and not too woolly on the neck pickup. Coming now to a very common change that I make to pretty much all of my guitars, installing Graphtec string saver saddles. Now, this is largely because I have a bit of a phobia about standard saddles that you get on Tune-o-matic style bridges and how easily they seem to be able to break strings under the wrong conditions. I can usually sort this out pretty quickly by installing some string saver saddles, as I say, but I didn't anticipate the difficulty of putting said saddles onto the factory fitted bridge. The issue was that the saddle screw sizes were not compatible with the Graphtec saddles, so I had to install a whole new Goto bridge that would then fit the replacements. Again, being sure to check the measurements and the post positions before ordering. Once I had that all swapped over, I was very happy with the setup, and I once again have had absolutely zero breakages at the saddle. As for any other changes I made to the guitar, I did mention earlier that there was a mod that my luthier brother George installed. A sound that I've always loved, which has come from a particularly iconic Les Paul guitar, was the famous greeny out-of-phase tone, which was popularised by Peter Green and then Gary Moore, and that same guitar now is owned by Kirk Hammett. But I have always wanted the option of accessing that tone without having to permanently alter the neck pickup's polarity. This would allow me to retain the standard middle pickup position sound, but then at the flick of a switch, flip the neck pickup's polarity electronically. We decided to install a push-pull pot to be the neck pickup's tone pot and also act as that polarity switch, and it works great. Here's a little clip of that going into the guitar, as well as a quick demo of it in action. Right, so I'm here in my brother's workshop. Say hello, George.
Hello, George.
Yeah, so we're looking at basically replacing, I think it's this pot here, isn't it, with
putting that little bad boy in.
Yeah.
So this is a little push-pull switch, basically switches between the contacts up here, and will allow you to do a few different options, including the, well, quite commonly used coil tap that a lot of people use on humbuckers to switch to single coil, or what you're after today, phase reverse.
Yes.
Which, yeah, basically we're reversing which is the output and which is going to earth on the outputs of the pickup. One thing we noticed on the way in was that this was a little bit loose with the sort of standard nut and washer, and it's not exactly like it's an expensive jack socket on here, but it's absolutely fine. But it's a little trick we can do to these to add a little star washer like that, which stops these shaking loose, which is pretty common on a lot of guitars. Cheap ones, expensive ones, all the same.
Right, yeah, so given that the guitar goes for so cheap, you have to imagine that because on the surface it looks like it is a very high quality instrument, there has to be some corners cut somewhere. So little bits like this, generally you'll find, will probably be, well, occasionally a little subpar, but there are easy modifications, as we're demonstrating, that you can do to make them a lot better.
So it's a little star washer there, makes it nice and tight, and that's not going to shake loose in a hurry.
Let's go with red.
Cut the end of the wire off. Yep. See how much we'll need. Very important to tin the wires before soldering so that you get a nice even flow. So So this being the output wire, we want this in the middle. Okay, done. The output wire we want to have as the alternative output is actually soldered to the ground already, so we just need to free that one. I'm just going to cut the heat shrink sleeving off it. It comes off there and exposes the other wire. So I can just cut that off. There we go. And then I'll desolder the two. I often use a pair of long nose pliers like this. Just put in the gap and just hold it open. Should just pull it apart neatly like that.
Marvellous.
So the earth wire is just going to be going to earth by itself.
Yeah, so just to quickly clarify, it is important to have a 4-conductor.
You need 4 conductors, so that means,
yeah,
excluding the earth, we've got the main output there. That's usually one goes to ground, and then we've got the link wires that goes between the two sides of the pickups. Our humbucker is basically 2 single core pickups stuck together, which you can see if you look at this guitar down here.
of course, yeah, many people have seen that.
So we're pre-tinning the contact on that as well. So you see, like the other side, you got it bare at the top there. We wanted to actually have some solder on it ready to go. So that's the side we want for the main output, because that's where it's going to be at rest. Because then you can choose when you pull it up to pull it out of phase. It'll be in phase the rest of the time. So that's now soldered on there. Let's solder the other output to the other side. A little tricky when you've only got 2 hands. Okay, that's on properly. I've got another little contact between the 2 solder joints here. Clip it out so that they're not connected. Wire up the ground to that as well. Soldered to ground. And now that that's in, we just need to connect it up and remove the old pot. Some people just cut these out, but I actually like to desolder them so I can put them back in properly. Just the wire coming from the volume pot, and another one for earth. And that's kind of it for a tone pot. They're really simple. Remove control knob there. Pop the nut off. Unfortunately, they're not the right size for this new pot going in, so I'll have to use a new washer. So that's the old tone pot there. Very simple, nothing much to it. We can keep the old washer and nut with it, so it's not going to be missing anything. Oh, and the star washer. It's something we can keep as a cheap spare because we know it's in good condition. It's pretty much brand new, no crackling or anything, so it's good to keep as a spare.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to have to ream up the hole slightly, because the new pot is also a little bit wider on the shaft, as we can probably see if we put them together. You can see those shafts are quite a different size.
Oh yes, yeah.
So I've got this reamer, it's a 10mm reamer.
Yeah.
And we're just going to ream out the hole a little bit.
Yeah, very useful.
It's a nice neat way of doing it. You can do it with a drill, but it's a little bit more risky that you might chip the paint or something. Whereas this is a really nice, slightly squeaky way of doing it, but it just means that this finish is nice and safe. Get it all the way through to the back. Okay, that's through.
Comes through there.
That's it. Get a little pile of wood from what's come out. Make sure that's all nice and clean. And then the new pot should just fit. Check it always before we solder it all up. It'll just fit through the hole. It's a little bit on the tight side, but not too bad. It's going to be just fine. So the other thing as well, you get different length pots, so you need to be careful. As again you can see, there's a short one and a long one there. Well, it's not even that long, it's more of a medium length.
Yeah.
But that there's a short one, something that you'd find in, say, a Telecaster or a Strat, something with just a thin scratch plate.
Yeah.
Whereas this going through a wooden body, they're typically a bit thicker.
Yeah, with a bit of a carved top on it as well.
Yeah.
So the height varies a bit on the top.
And this has also got a little notch, which again can be used for locating, but in this case it's just going to get in the way, so we're just going to snip that off like that. That is only going to get in the way for mounting, and then it can mount with a little bit more spare on the other side there, so we can get a nut and washer on just fine.
Yeah.
And then it should just go like that when you push pull.
Fab.
Now we're going to fit the nut and washer. And for this one, I'm not entirely sure if this is a metric or imperial size.
Probably metric. But having said that,
metric, but I think this one is a bit of a funny one.
Yeah.
In that it has an imperial thread, even though it's a metric pot.
Ah.
Again, you get all kind of weird sizes with guitars. So yeah, that's a little bit too thick. So I think it's probably going to be an imperial size, and it is. So metric pot with a metric spline shaft. Imperial thread on it. It's one of the tricky ones that sometimes you get thrown. And a slightly different size of washer. Of course they're all mixed in because they're roughly the same size. One imperial size washer. Yep, that fits now. As does that. Lovely. Okay. Now we just finished soldering on those last few bits before we fit it in properly. Now we've got the wire coming from the volume pot for the tone, because this is obviously a tone pot as well as going to be our push-pull phase switcher. So now we need to fit that through from the volume pot, otherwise we ain't got no tone. And we always need tone on it.
we do need tone.
You'd be remarkably amazed how few guitarists actually use the tone control. It's kind of a set and forget for a lot of people.
Yes, well, with this modification, of course, altering the tone and volume pots with the out of phase position is going to have quite a drastic effect and will vary the sounds quite a bit, which is something I'm interested to try when this is done.
Yep, that's on. Just tighten that up. Just solder that earth back onto the pot. Yeah, that's on. And now, fingers crossed, everything should work perfectly.
Just checking it's all in working order.
Yep. So we've got this, that's the neck position there, middle, bridge, and here it's all working. So even the connections you haven't done, it's good to check. There you go, tone's working, volume's working, and you'll hear a change when you change the phase around, but no discernible change in tone, obviously, until we put it in the middle position. So this is how it was before, and this is now with phase switch.
Right, okay.
And that's it.
Cool. In summary then, obviously it's clear I've done a number of things to this guitar to get it to be the exact instrument I wanted and needed. But it should be remembered that the stock instrument, after a decent setup to maximise playability, is a whole lot of guitar for the money. I can say hand on heart that if I had to choose a guitar to hire out on a tour date overseas, for instance, potentially dodgy locking tuners aside, this would be pretty high up on the list. It's pretty solidly put together and it's very comfortable to play night after night. What I can say with absolute confidence is that it is entirely worth the money. It feels and sounds like a guitar that could be easily double the price, and with a few optional mods it can become a truly top quality instrument. I would really struggle to settle for any other L-type guitar at this point. This has everything I'm looking for. I hope you all gained some insight into a regularly gigging guitarist experience with a good quality but affordable instrument. I think going down the route of buying the guitar as a solid base for modding is a great way to go. But even as a stock instrument, they're certainly ahead of a number of instruments in their price range. To summarise, like me, you could tinker with it to make an amazing guitar to suit your exact needs, or you could use it as stock to have a respectable upgrade from your beginner guitar, or if you fancy splashing out, you could have an absolutely brilliant starter instrument in your hands. It certainly has my seal of approval. It should also be stated that this isn't the only Sire guitar from this range that I own. I'm intending to make a similar video about my S7, which has been modded in very similar ways to make a very usable backup for one of my more expensive guitars. But I'll get into that next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share and subscribe, all that lovely stuff, so you can catch content like this, plus anything else I've already done on the channel that you may well enjoy. And if you enjoyed my playing through the video, why not check out my new music video for my latest single release, Look at the Sky. Anyway, until next time folks, stay safe out there, stay positive and stay musical.